Well, that was very kind, thank you. Far more than I probably deserve. I almost feel like I should be doing an autopsy in this room. It's, I can't even see to the top. I'm very aware that I'm the warm-up act for Mr. Khan, so I'm not going to sing or dance, and I'm going to be as brief as possible. And if you will bear with me, I'm going to talk to you about two things today. The first is heropreneurs, and the second is reinvention. And I'm going to start by telling you a story that in 1975, Air Force engineers developed some material that was used to protect Air Force pilots for G-force and takeoff. 16 years later, that space foam was reinvented as a Tempur mattress, a military brainwave that became a civilian luxury. And I'd like to talk throughout about reinvention and why it's so key, because I think reinvention is particularly remarkable as it's so incredibly efficient. It maximizes the value of one investment by stretching it into new realms of scalability, and it gives almost a new angle to every part of business, and indeed the human character. I'm also going to give you an example of a particular gentleman who is in the audience here today. Andy is 37, and after 9 years in the army, having been injured in Afghanistan, during which time he developed exceptional leadership skills, an ability to work under pressure, a gift for quick decision-making, and a tolerance for working exceptionally long hours, he reinvented himself as a restaurateur. He now runs 3 restaurants with a turnover over £1 million and employs 30 people, all contributing to the national purse as taxpayers. Andy was not a senior officer. He was a lance corporal with no qualifications, but after 10 years in the military, he understood the most important factor in any business, it's people. But he did have a couple of unfair advantages over his compadres and business rivals. For a start, he had had specialist training in how to deal with his colleagues and his enemies. And secondly, he'd been ambushed by the Taliban on a number of occasions, which meant he had an exceptional attitude to putting the stresses and strains of business, which we all know too well, into perspective. Now, I'm not going to harp on about Andy for too long. He's in the room, you can talk to him. He's a good example because there are many people that leave the armed forces that set up their own businesses, as am I. I grew up in children's homes and spent a good while in various juvenile detention centres as a child. I joined the army at 16, part press ganged by local magistrates and part trying to escape the world, which was fairly miserable. Like Andrew, I've also felt the adrenaline of bullets close enough to graze and the very terrible, terrible environment that we find ourselves in conflict, where friends have fallen, lost, or worse often, alive and maimed. From today's perspective, I've also experienced the true meaning of the word loyalty, a quality which I believe, unfortunately, is so sadly missing in so parts of the business world, and indeed society, but which is quite literally the difference between life and death in combat. And so returning to civilian life, and I do stress the word return, given that all of us are not born to the army, we are a volunteer military and a volunteer country. I realize that if I work the same way as I did in the military, with civilians in civilian life, I'm just going to grab some water if you'll excuse me. I'm recovering from a cold and I have a very dry mouth. Then surely people would work better for me. My instincts were correct, and indeed that is exactly what happened. Despite my own background and broken upbringing, I have an enormous amount of faith in this country, our young people and our veterans. And it is no secret that we are a nation of pioneers. The first pioneering into areas of industry, the first into commerce, the first into technology, the first into medicine, and where necessary, the first into battle. We have produced more Nobel Prizes per head of population than any country on earth. We mapped the human genome. We invented the steam engine. We built the light bulb and the World Wide Web. Indeed, this very room is named after a man that knows no introduction on electromagnetic theory, but who himself reinvented his own being later in life, from physicist to philosopher. And we have liberated more countries, and for often good reasons, present situations not being factored in, for so many years and for so many pure, decent reasons. In my view, you can judge a nation by its ability to reinvent. Take the Paralympics. Our country's medal count in 2008 was 102 medals amassed, beating every developed nation on earth bar its host, reinvention. Proving these proud athletes could consistently reinvent themselves to become as competent as any in their chosen discipline. But crucially, we have consistently managed to reinvent ourselves where necessary. We were the largest empire to commercialize the planet. Then we became an industrial powerhouse until we were bankrupted by 2 world wars. So our incredible little island reinvented itself again as a hotbed of service industries. And when our biggest banks, consultancies, and professional practices started to get bought out by overseas companies, we reinvented ourselves again as a home for small to medium-sized enterprise, whose breadth and diversity is as humbling as it is amazing. This reinvention is happening again as we speak. In short, we are a nation defined and redefined by reinvention, the very theme of my short chat with you today. And so although I'd like to introduce myself as being unique and special, my reinvention from a forlorn, forsaken, feral kid to frontline soldier to now an employer of over 2,000 people is by no means unique. There are plenty of us out there. It is what we do as a nation. In 2004, I left the army, begged a few grand from the bank, as we all do, financed it by a random paintball business that I had running at the weekend, and the rest is all history with a lot of hard, fudgy stuff in the middle. Today we manage assets in Africa worth over $250 million, with bold plans to move into frontier markets in post-conflict Africa in agriculture, retail, real estate, and tourism. I am eternally grateful for the mentoring that the Armed Forces has provided me. It helped me develop and sharpen the skills which I draw upon today, which is why I have remained so closely and so fortuitously for me. Connectability is important to the various military charities that are out there. I am a patron, and very proud to be so, of a charity that I helped found with David Cameron called Tickets for Troops, an ambassador to combat stress, and I am delighted to be a director and investor personally into Heropreneurs. Heropreneurs is, of course, why I'm stood here today. It is mind-numbingly simple but previously neglected, and it is all about reinvention. For too long, the men and women of our armed forces have left to join stereotypical roles. You know, the sort of thing Billy fought in Iraq, and now he's become a bouncer. It is a fundamental waste of talent. The MOD resettlement program is useless. I know, I've been through it. 60,000 men and women are going to leave the armed forces over the next 5 years. That's one kick-ass labour force that's used to being poorly paid, working long hours, and will follow direction. Our veterans are remarkably trustworthy, disciplined, determined, and highly trained. And they're forced to think on their feet and to perform under the greatest of pressures. Yet no one has channeled this into an entrepreneurial pipe for businesses effectively. Nobody has harnessed this ubiquitous and mixed set of skills. There hasn't been funding from the MOD, and nobody has been there to help them fulfill their potential and to reinvent themselves in that characteristically British way. Until now. Because that's what we do at Heropreneurs, helping veterans demonstrate that their entrepreneurial ideas are workable, economical, scalable, maybe franchisable, but ultimately sustainable. All those lovely words that banks and VC and private equity all want to hear. We will invest, mentor, coach, and develop them through these ideas, funding as we go, to make sure that we provide, under commercial terms, some successful exits. Our world is changing. We know this, and our businesses need something new and exportable, and it requires leaders who are visionary, tough, loyal, robust, and capable of working very well under pressure. The military produces this by the bucket load. We know we're in an economic black hole. We know it's a fiscal barren tundra. We need leadership. Powerful, dynamic ideas and motivated workforces of small business men and women to drive their ideas forward with passion and guile. This country, its young people, its veterans, all of us need to believe in a British dream. As good as it would stand today as it did in America when it was coined so successfully and enshrined into the Declaration of Independence, in which freedom includes a promise of the possibility of prosperity and success. Where the inspiration has gone, I have no idea. The last time I was impressed by a British politician was when Prescott chinned that bloke on TV for egging him. How are we expected as a nation to push through this chasm we are currently in if we are not led from the front, given the tools and set to the task? In this space, at least, that's what Heropreneurs is going to do, providing finance support and, where the state and banks won't oblige, to launch great Heropreneurial ideas. We intend to build an army of them, building SMEs, stimulating the economy, creating jobs, creating opportunity, turning our little great island back into where it should be and what it should be doing. Reinvention. Thank you very much.